Prancer. Mr. Sunshine pulled open the top left-hand drawer of his desk and took out the bottomless purse. Harmonsworth had, of course, told him about the partnership meeting, to which, of course, he hadn't been invited. Which was all wrong, needless to say, but there wasn't a great deal he could do about it without starting a full-scale war, and for some reason he had a feeling that now wasn't the right time for all that. Accordingly, he opened another drawer, in which sat the mysterious parcel, not to be opened, etc. He frowned. Technical problem.
Harmonsworth, he said. Flights of angels.
Coming right up. Harmonsworth's idea of a flight of angels wasn't one he entirely shared. There were only 3 of them, and they looked more like dissipated butterflies. But they soared in, swept the mystery package out of the drawer, hovered with it balanced between their tiny, beating so fast as to be invisible wings, then at his direction lowered it into the bottomless purse, whose mouth expanded to take it, and then contracted back to its normal size. Then the angels fizzled out like sparklers, and Mr. Sunshine was left holding the purse. It was heavier than normal, and almost uncomfortably warm.
Smart, said Harmonsworth. There's no way you can hide it where he won't find it, but now he daren't touch it for fear of getting frizzled up. You could have hidden it,
Mr. Sunshine said, with mild reproach.
In with you.
No, sorry, I have to live there. Mr. Sunshine sighed.
Fair enough, he thought. Could you at least make it glow a bit, he said, so it actually looks contaminated?
Sure. The purse glowed with a revolting green light.
Perfect,
Mr. Sunshine said, and put the purse away in its drawer, which he then locked with a small brass key.
Now then, he said, about that parcel.
Been investigating, Harmonsworth said. Not good.
You don't say.
Ran spectrographic analysis, performed quantum scan, created virtual simulation in order to ascertain metaphysical density quotient in 17 different spatio-temporal aspects.
And?
It's not from around here.
I sort of gathered that. Anything else?
There was an unusually long pause. You're not going to like this. Mr. Sunshine frowned.
Go on.
Belongs to someone.
Oddly enough, so do a lot of things. What about it?
Someone we know.
Oh.
Someone in particular. He'd known Harmonsworth a long time, and vice versa. Between them, therefore, some things didn't need to be put into words, even assuming that appropriate words could be found.
Oh, balls,
said Mr. Sunshine.
Not really.
Afraid so.
For crying out loud.
Mr. Sunshine composed himself just in time. Already, outside the window, the sky was iron grey, and the first raindrops were starting to fall.
Harmonsworth.
Present.
Have we got a recent address for...
Yes.
That's all right, then. Wrap it up in brown paper and send it on.
Address recent but obsolete. Not there anymore.
She's not there.
Address not there. Blown up.
That figures,
thought Mr. Sunshine.
You make yourself sufficiently unpopular, people start reaching for the nuclear warheads. Hang on, though, he said. We've got an address, haven't we? On Alpha Centauri.
Confirmed. Mr. Sunshine hesitated. It was a lot to ask. On the other hand...
Harmonsworth.
Present.
You wouldn't do me a small favour, would you?
No.
Oh, come on. It's not all that far. Practically down the end of the street.
Distance to Alpha Centauri, currently 4.37 light years. No scheduled public transport. Very cold in space. For a split second, Mr. Sunshine was angry. People saying no to him had that effect. He could command, issue a direct order. But did he want to do that? To Harmonsworth?
No, he decided. Probably not.
The fact that you can do a thing often means that you can't, not if you have to live with yourself afterwards.
Fine, he said. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I don't want to.
But it leaves us with a serious problem,
Mr. Sunshine went on.
It means there's a real danger she'll turn up here to collect it.
Horror!
Quite. Of course, that doesn't affect you as directly as it affects me. Even so...
Horror! Mr. Sunshine sighed and looked at his watch. In 10 minutes they'd be starting the partnership meeting. Without him. One damn thing after another. Maybe, he thought, maybe it really is time to retire. Pack it all in, get away from it all. A cottage in the country somewhere, roses around the door, a nice bit of garden to look after, a kennel for Harmansworth outside the back door. Peace, tranquillity, watching the sun set on the veranda with a glass in his hand. Contentment. Boredom. Senescence. Death. Or maybe not. The alternative was taking arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing ending them, but he was used to that.
Forget it,
he said.
It was just an idea.
Noted.
And if she comes here,
Mr. Sunshine said decisively,
we'll just have to try and be nice to her. That's all.
Partnership meetings, formal ones, with minutes as opposed to casual bumpings into each other in the corridors and heated discussions in the mailroom, didn't happen every day at Dawson's, so there were established protocols, almost verging on rituals. Meetings always took place in the big conference room on the 5th floor. In the ordinary course of events, the building only had 4 floors. The partners sat around a beautiful round table made of figured walnut and polished to a mirror finish. The finish was, in fact, a genuine functional imp-reflecting mirror, which means that your reflection in it shows you as you are truly. In the middle of the table there would be a small rosewood box with its lid open. Inside the box was a chip of masonry salvaged from the Palace of Truth after it was finally demolished. Inside the Palace of Truth, you don't need reminding, it was physically impossible to tell a lie. Whether or not the chip actually had the same effect, nobody was entirely sure, mostly because they were too scared to put it to the test. On the conference room walls hung portraits of all the partners, placed so they had their backs to them. Understandably enough. There was a reason why none of the partners looked a day over 40, but they didn't necessarily want to be reminded of it. The whole point of a round table is that it doesn't have a head, but traditionally the partners only used one side of it, forming a semicircle. The other side of the table was reserved for Mr. Ahriman, who never turned up, though a pad of paper, pencils and a cup of tea were always laid out for him, just in case. Gina Noctis always took the minutes, because she was the only one of them with legible handwriting.
Right,
Mr. Dawson said.
We're all here. Let's get started. Minutes of the last meeting taken as read.
Everybody nodded, and a faint tapping noise came from the massive iron box on the tabletop opposite the 5th empty chair. 1 tap for yes, 2 for no. 2 taps.
Pack it in, Jerry,
said Mr. Dawson irritably to his evil twin inside the box.
This is no time for locking about. Minutes of the last meeting approved as read.
1 tap.
Thank you. Let's move on. Item 1 on the agenda. We need to generate considerably more income. Suggestions?
Dead silence.
Oh, come on,
Mr. Dawson said.
There's got to be something we can do. Brian, how's the irritable bowel syndrome?
I haven't got irritable bowel.
Yes, but you could have.
Mr. Teasdale scowled at him. We've already been into all that about 1 million times. What comes out of me is mine. Period. End of conversation.
Not if it's on partnership premises,
Mr. Dawson said wearily.
In which case it's partnership property. Come on, Bri. Sometimes you've got to take one for the team.
No.
That's a rather selfish attitude, if you don't mind me saying so.
Tough. Frantic rapping from inside the iron box, subsiding gradually.
All right, Mr. Dawson said. If that's your last word, we'd better move on. Gina?
I don't know why you're looking at me like that, Gina said. I haven't got any ideas.
Gina?
You can't just summon a meeting and expect Brian and me to solve all your problems. It's not fair, unloading it all on us. We didn't get you into this mess, remember? So I don't see why we should be expected to get you out again.
Gina, please.
What I don't understand, Mr. Teasdale said, is why you don't just buy the bastard out. One-off capital sum and we're shot of him, for good. An agonised look passed over Mr. Dawson's face.
You think I haven't tried? He won't play ball. You know as well as I do. He isn't in it for the money.
He can't have it both ways, Mr. Teasdale said stubbornly. Either he wants to squeeze you for every penny he can get, or he doesn't.
You don't know him like I do,
Mr. Dawson said quietly. There was no answer to that. Mr. Teasdale and Gina exchanged an uncomfortable look. All right, Mr. Teasdale said. Let's explore our options. Expand the business. Get into profitable new sectors.
Such as...
Mr. Dawson looked at him. It was a sort of expression you might expect to find on the face of a dying son. Mr. Teasdale's brain raced, lost its traction and spun out of control. Entertainment and media, he said.
What?
What indeed? Well, he said, you've heard of industrial light and magic. We could do that. The dying son looked sceptical.
Last I heard, Zauberwerk had all that side of the business sewn up. No offence, but the last thing we need right now is a pissing contest with Otto Schlimm and his boys. Besides, it'd take too long. We need to find a way of getting more money out of our existing client base. Suggestions?
Gina frowned. Go take a running jump?
That's a suggestion, certainly, said Mr. Dawson, but not a helpful one. Come on, Gina. What about hustling some of those old money clients of yours? Find some problem they never knew they had and fix it for them.
Gina's eyes flashed, and the whole building started to shake. Fuck you, Tom, she said. It's taken me 1,000 years to earn the loyalty and trust of my client base, and I'm damned if I'm going to throw it all away just because you've got yourself into a jam. This is all your fault anyhow. If you hadn't squeezed out Ted Sunshine... The iron box rocked violently to and fro and fell off the table onto the floor. Condensation was dripping down the oak-panelled walls. Mr. Teasdale made an awkward coughing noise. Moving on, he said. What about financial services? The other two turned their heads and looked at him.
Go on, said Mr. Dawson.
Well, his mind was a total blank. Then a voice from his subconscious whispered something in his inner ear. Historically based fiscal engineering, he said.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Good question. He waited for the prompt. It came. A whole new spatio-temporally grounded approach to tax efficiency for major corporations, he said. All right, try this. You're a giant multinational with a virtual monopoly on e-commerce, but you find you're making ridiculous sums of money and nasty governments want you to pay tax on it. So what you do is this. You start up a small, wholly owned subsidiary in, say, 1539 and another in 2520, and you hive off your excess profits into the past, generations before corporation tax was even thought of.
Hold hat, Mr. Dawson snapped. Orinoco have been doing it for years. And Weeble.
Oh, Mr. Teasdale frowned. Have they? I didn't know that.
God, you're naive. Anyway, JWW and Simpsons practically own that sector. We'd never get a look in. Also, as I just said, it'd take too long. We need revenue now.
He sighed, slumped forward and let his head drop into his hands.
All right, he said. I vote we go through our current workload case by case and see what scope we've got for gouging the customers hollow. Brian, you first.
Mr. Teasdale hesitated. I'm not sure I've got anything particularly relevant to the...
Oh, come on, Mr. Dawson snapped. You're working on something, aren't you? You're not just sitting with your feet up reading a book.
Tom, Gina said, lay off him, will you? Of course I'm working on something, Mr. Teasdale snapped back. I'm up to here with work, if you must know. It's just, I don't think what I've got going right now is gouging friendly. Mr. Dawson pulled a face.
Piss-ass private client stuff. If I've told you once...
Oh, it's not that, Mr. Teasdale replied dangerously. Quite the opposite, if you must know. This is too big. He stopped, 2 syllables too late. Mr. Dawson was looking at him. So was Gina Noctis. Too big, she echoed. Brian, is this something we need to notify the insurers about? He shook his head. It's under control, I promise you. I can handle it.
Is there money in it?
Mr. Dawson demanded. Mr. Teasdale thought about that. Well, he said, I guess money is a part of everything, so I'd have to answer, yes, there is. Everything, Gina said. Brian, we don't do everything. It explicitly said so in the partnership agreement. We don't do divorce, missing persons, stray pets, or everything. It's not worth the hassle.
Shut up and let him finish,
Mr. Dawson said.
What have you done?
So Mr. Teasdale told them all about it, beginning with the hats and ending with what the blue ectoplasmic face had told him, deep inside his mind. When he'd finished, he leaned back in his chair and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Christ almighty, Gina said. Mr. Dawson looked like an American lawyer who's just been run over by God.
There's money in that,
he whispered.
Loads of money.
Mr. Teasdale gave him a terrified look. Yes, but Tom, Gina said, with a terrible urgency. Let me talk to Ted Sunshine. If I explain just how bad things are, I'm sure I can get him to help you out with that purse of his. I know he hates you, but if I asked him to do it for my sake...
Screw Ted Sunshine,
Mr. Dawson said quietly.
We don't need him. We're going to be rich.
Tom, I'm a partner in this firm, and I'm telling you here and now, we are not going to...
Shut your face, Gina. You're outvoted. Jerry and me against you and Brian, and I've got his...
He nodded toward the empty chair.
Proxy. So it's 3-2. Sorry, but there it is. I'll just get you to note that in the minutes.
Gina was furious. Since when did Jerry get a vote? Mr. Dawson shrugged.
He's a partner, Gina. Same as you and me. It's a done deal. Live with it.
There was a terrible moment. If anyone had been foolish enough to strike a match, a lot of maps would have needed to be redrawn. Then Gina said, Of course. We voted on it, so that's fine. I'll write it down like you said. Just don't blame me, that's all. Mr. Dawson looked at her, and it occurred to him that just possibly she knew something about all this that he didn't. If circumstances had been different, he'd have asked. As it was, he didn't really think he could.
Great,
he said.
Thank you so much for your cooperation. Now, let's talk this through and figure out how we're going to optimize it from a revenue perspective.
By his foot, the iron box rattled violently. He ignored it. Tony Bateman had been working late, but nobody seemed to have noticed. He scowled at his office wall, which looked back at him in the manner of Nietzsche's abyss. A whole hour, complete waste of time and virtue. If a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to saw it up into planks and sell it to a lumberyard, what good is it to anybody? Answer? None at all. Actually, working was a slight overstatement. He had the cost-slasher account warehouse file open on the desk in front of him, but he hadn't looked at it. He'd spent the hour of his irreplaceable life since theoretical going-home time, reading customer reviews on whichhelicopter.com, although unless he got a decent bonus this year, the research was largely academic. Still, the Airbus looked pretty cool, but the Augusta probably had the edge over the Kawasaki in honest-to-God bang-for-buck durability, as against the sheer street legend status of the something scuttled. He looked up from his screen, finger hovering. Mice? In this office? Really? Anything's possible, but he didn't think so. He waited, holding his breath. There it was again, the patter of tiny paws. I'm good at this, he remembered. I saw in first year end of term exams. He visualised a scuttler with his mind's eye, envisioned an outcome and let fly. As the smoke cleared and the ringing in his ears died away, he also remembered the examiner's caveat, scrawled at the foot of his assessment report. Must be careful not to overdo it. Ah well. He stood up, expecting to see tiny gobbets of mouse shrapnel sprayed across the wall. Instead, he saw a woman in a business suit lying on the floor with her head at the waste paper basket. Fuck a stoat, he thought. I've killed someone. That proved not to be the case, and when she groaned and lifted her head out of the bin, he was able to update his assessment. An attractive brunette in a business suit, madder than a wet hen. You idiot, she said. You could have killed me. Not really, since the charge was tailored to a 20-gram mouse rather than a 50-kilo human. He didn't point that out, however, because sometimes the truth isn't what people want to hear. Sorry, he said. I thought you were a mouse. Actually, he said, with a frown, you were a mouse. Don't be ridiculous. No, Tony said. You were. I know because I visualised you. You were about yay long, grey, with a tail. He grinned. It's okay, he said. I'm one too. A mouse. A shape changer. She wilted slightly, or maybe melted would be closer to the mark. Fine, she said. I was a mouse. What are you going to do about it? Report me. Well, Tony said, you don't work here, and you were sneaking about after hours disguised as a mouse, so maybe I should, since you mention it. She shook her head. I wouldn't if I were you, she said. Not unless you enjoy being embarrassed. So happens I'm a very close personal friend of one of the partners. No kidding. His mind whirred and clicked. The way she said it implied, you must be Brian Teasdale's ex-wife. Yes, Consuela Teasdale. And you are? Tony Bateman. He hasn't mentioned you. Well, why would he? I'm just a wage slave. She grinned. A wage slave with an interest in private helicopters. Gosh, he thought, from the other side of the room transformed into a mouse. Only entry level, he mumbled. Sure. Now, let me give you a word of advice. All right. She looked straight at him, and he couldn't help noticing that her eyes were as deep and as brown as the bottomless pits of you-know-what reserved for blasphemers and the third circle of hell. You don't want to bother with your guster? No? No. If it ain't a Sikorsky, it's not worth having, so if I were you, I'd carry on saving up my pennies until I could afford the real thing. Nobody likes a cheapskate. Is Brian in his office, do you know? Haven't seen him, Tony said, in a voice that came out all funny. Shucks, doesn't matter. I know the way. She transformed back into a mouse, darted into a tiny hole in the skirting board and vanished, leaving Tony staring. It took him a surprisingly long time to pull himself together. The mouse emerged at the bottom of a drainpipe in a back alley, shook itself and walked down Moorgate towards the bank. Bastards, she thought. Evil, cheating, treacherous bastards. At least her brief foray into industrial espionage had confirmed her suspicions. It had to be a trinity. It couldn't be anything else. Not the way Brian had described it at the meeting. Maybe even a... She realised there wasn't an established academic term for 4 entities in one, and foursome probably had the wrong connotations. Anyhow, maybe one of those. So far, so good. But not once during the meeting had that rat Brian mentioned her name, or the fact that he'd promised faithfully to bring her in on the case, strongly implying that either he'd forgotten all about her, or that he was too scared of that jerk Dawson to make good on his solemn undertaking. For crying out loud, she thought, is he a man or a mouse? Well, quite. A rat and a mouse. Suddenly rodents everywhere. The difference was, she could stop being one any time she liked. She wasn't sure the same held true for her ex-husband. The firm of JWW, formerly J.W. Wells & Co., before the hedge fund bought out the few surviving partners, has been at St Mary Axe for centuries, back when that splendid highway was still just a muddy ditch. These days you can't just walk in off the street. If you're a client, you send a text message from wherever you happen to be, and a footman in full livery materialises in front of you and escorts you through a trans-dimensional portal into the main lobby. The staff entrance is rather less ostentatious. Senior management gain access by walking on the crack between two specific paving stones directly outside. Junior staff have to turn themselves into raindrops and aim for the guttering on an adjacent building. Theoretically, Consuela should have been a raindrop, but use of the crack had been given to her as part of a settlement package after the toilet incident, at her express insistence. She wasn't one of nature's raindrops, as anyone who knew her well would be happy to confirm. Once you're inside, you'd never guess that you were in a building that doesn't, strictly speaking, exist. The JWW offices are situated in Custard Space, an artificial dimension invented and patented by the late Professor Van Spee of Leiden when he was briefly a partner in JWW. Originally, Custard Space was intended for limited applications, such as the hugely successful portable parking space. Take it anywhere, unroll it, simple as that. Later on, in collaboration with the much-dreaded venture capital outfit Blue Remembered Hills Incorporated, JWW retro-engineered the concept so as to be applicable to real estate, building huge developments of luxury homes in tiny cracks and crevices of the space-time continuum, undetectable by any instrumentality known to current science, but still offering quick and easy access to shops, public transport, and a wide range of leisure facilities. A knee-jerk reaction to the collapse of the Summer Acres retirement resort into the existential void led to onerous planning restrictions, which made Custard Space uneconomic as a source of building land. But nevertheless, JWW, with a touch of defiance befitting one of the oldest and proudest firms in the profession, insisted on using it when they built their new office complex at the turn of the 21st century. Faceless local government bureaucrats immediately issued an enforcement order requiring that the whole lot be pulled down forthwith. But since JWW Holdings Limited has its registered office on 7 Alpha Leonis somewhere around AD 6260, there's not a lot they can do about it. The Lord Mayor of London no longer sends a JWW CEO a Christmas card, but that's about it. Thanks to a nasty outbreak of open-plan design about the time of the refit, Consuela had a workspace rather than office. In theory, this should have resulted in ideas sharing, networking and team-structured problem-solving in conjunction with the dozen or so other unfortunates kettled up in the cattle pen. In practice, the first thing everybody did was run up the most impressive set of Chinese walls that his or her professional abilities allowed. Consuela's bit of space was protected by curtains of fire, extended from the carpet to the ceiling, through which only the pure in heart and colleagues of her pay grade and above could pass without being utterly consumed. This meant she had to fetch her own coffee, but she reckoned that was a small price to pay for not having people breathing down her neck all the time. She stepped through the fire, which had the added benefit of burning away all the dust and grime of the city's streets, and dropped into her chair. 26 messages for her on her screen, but she couldn't be bothered with them. The bastards, she thought, all the partners in Dawson's in general, and Brian in particular, all banded together to cheat me out of the first, possibly the only authentic trinity so far discovered. She'd see about that. When a volcano cools, its fiery effluent turns to hard rock. Slowly and deliberately, Consuela dissected the situation, looking for a weak point she could burrow in through. It didn't take her long. Dawsons were only involved and authorised to act in the manner because this idiotic wedding photographer, what was her name? Lilith McGregor, was their client, so easy peasy. If Lilith decided to take her business elsewhere, Dawsons would be out of the game, simple as that, and she'd have it all to herself. All she had to do was persuade this silly little girl that she'd be better off with JWW handling her business, rather than some Martin Parr outfit with an office over a chemist's shop. Overstating the case just a bit, maybe, but not by all that much. The problem was, JWW did tend to charge rather a lot of money for its services, and doing jobs for free was frowned on by the management. She knew, a certain degree of latitude thanks to the toilet thing, But she wasn't convinced of her ability to parlay that into taking on a major project with no prospect of the firm getting paid for it. Unless... She clicked on a few things, and up came the client database. She selected a particular client, read the brief, and smiled. That, she decided, would do nicely. Of course, she'd have to clear it with the boss, but that oughtn't to be an insuperable difficulty, especially if it meant robbing a client from under Tom Dawson's nose. No love lost there. Open secret. Provided it was done tactfully, no problem at all. A few keystrokes and she had a nicely phrased memo ready to send. She read it over and sent it. A minute or so later, back came the reply from her direct superior. It read, "Sure, kiddo. Go for it." She grinned, practically a license to kill and print money. Her only regret was that she wouldn't be there to see Brian's face when he realised what she'd done to him. Hey-ho.
"Get away,"
said Mr. Sunshine. "Straight up," said Gina. She hesitated. "Ted," she said, "you don't happen to know these people, do you?" Mr. Sunshine's face was illegible, like badly weathered hieroglyphs.
"I might do," he said. "I know lots of people, but it sounds like it was all a very long time ago, so I don't suppose they'd remember me."
Gina doubted that, but he was doing the big stone face, so she let it go. "Ring any bells?"
"Most things do,"
Mr. Sunshine said evasively.
"My life is a veritable feast of campanology, but nothing immediately springs to mind. Look,"
he added, sitting down at his desk and opening a drawer.
"Why don't we run through it all again, just to make sure I've got it straight in my head?"
"Ted!"
"Please,"
Mr. Sunshine said. The inside of the drawer was glowing blue, and it occurred to Gina that maybe the recapitulation wouldn't be solely for his benefit. "I'd have thought," she said, nodding at the drawer, "he'd have heard that all already." A hard look crossed Mr. Sunshine's normally amiable face.
"No,"
he said.
"Apparently Tom Dawson's found some new way of keeping Harmansworth out, so he wasn't there at the meeting."
If that's true, Gina thought, Tom is considerably smarter than he looks. She resolved to bear that in mind. "All right," she said. "From the top?"
"Please."
"Here goes then," Gina said. "It turns out to be all about that Gainsborough woman."
"The one with the hats?"
"That's right. Now, at least we've got a name for her."
"Tiamat the Destroyer,"
Mr. Sunshine said.
"Ancient triple-aspected goddess of life, death and rebirth in ancient Mesopotamia. With you so far."
"Well," Gina went on, "that's who's taken to cropping up uninvited in Lilith McGregor's wedding snaps. Also in Tom Gainsborough's paintings, but he died before he could do what she wanted him to do. Apparently, associating with this woman is bad for you." A muscle twitched at the side of Mr. Sunshine's face.
"Apparently,"
he said.
"Tiamat the Destroyer. Haven't heard that name in a long time."
"Lucky old you," Gina said, "because by all accounts she's not a very nice person. In one of her aspects, anyhow. Presumably, when she's being life and rebirth, she's an absolute sweetie."
"Oh, I don't know,"
Mr. Sunshine said.
"Anyhow, let's get on. Tiamat."
Gina looked at him. "You seem to be having trouble with the name."
"Not really. It's just... well, you know how it is. You know someone for 30 years as Tom, or Gus, or Max. And so when people start talking about Thomas and Augustus and Maximilian, it all sounds a bit odd somehow."
"I see. You know her as..."
"I wouldn't say no exactly, but back in the day she was mostly known as Dolly."
"Dolly?" Mr. Sunshine nodded.
"Short for the abominable idolatry of the Ishmaelites. Pal of mine used to call her that, and it sort of stuck. You know how these things do. There was a time people used to call me Smiler. Not anymore, I'm delighted to say."
"Dolly?"
"It'd make it easier for me, if that's all right with you."
"All right," Gina said. "Dolly the Destroyer."
"Just Dolly will do."
"This woman," Gina said, "claims to have been trapped in an asteroid for 4,000 years, thanks to a spell cast on her by an evil wizard."
Her ex-husband.
That's right, yes. Anyway, she's really not happy about it, and although she can't get out of the asteroid without the key, recently she's figured out how to make it do what she wants. So right now, she's got it pointed at planet Earth with the throttle set to ramming speed. Mr. Sunshine nodded.
That's Dolly all right. Sorry, I'll keep interrupting. Go on.
A collision, Gina went on, would crack open the asteroid and release her unharmed, but would destroy the planet. Omelettes and eggs as far as she's concerned. But she thought it would be nice to give us a chance to sort things out amicably first. Look, you obviously know all this already, so why don't you tell your little pal there all about it and let me get on with something else?
He'd rather hear it from you,
Mr. Sunshine said.
He likes you.
Does he? Gina said, startled. The idea of Harmondsworth liking anybody except his master hadn't occurred to her before. Good grief. All right then. Actually, that's about it. She says that unless someone gets her out, she's going to smash the earth and we're all going to die. But if we could possibly release her before the moment of final impact, she'll make it worth our while.
That presumably, said Mr. Sunshine, is the point where Tom Dawson started paying attention.
Well, yes, Gina said. Apparently, when Dolly and her ex split up, she got Earth as part of the divorce settlement, but then he locked her up in the asteroid out of pure spite, so it's never been much good to her. She says that if we can get her out, she'll give us 25% of the Earth and all that therein is. Tom liked the sound of that a lot.
Mr. Sunshine nodded slowly. It'd get you-know-who off his back, certainly, he said, for a while at least. Remind me, he went on, how this Lilith McGregor comes into it.
Oh, her, our client. She's Dolly's daughter.
Mr. Sunshine couldn't help smiling. Fancy Dolly having a grown-up kid, he said. Time flies, doesn't it?
4,000 years. Quite. She's not her daughter exactly, Gina said. To be precise, she's an eternally recurring reincarnation, mortal, human, and practically normal, but when she dies, her soul is reborn into a replacement body or something like that, and so on for 120 generations. Anyway, that's why her mother-daughter affinity, the strongest bond known to exist anywhere in nature.
Mr. Sunshine looked at her. You never had kids, did you?
No. Why?
No reason. Go on.
Actually, that's about it, Gina said. I told Tom we don't do divorce.
I thought that was everything.
Divorce and everything. Besides, this is everything too. Two very good reasons why we shouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Tom wouldn't listen. Look, is your little friend heard enough yet? Mr. Sunshine peered into the drawer, and a blue light lit up his face.
He gets a general idea, he said,
and closed the drawer.
Awkward, he said.
Gina breathed out slowly through her nose. Why didn't you tell me you know this Dolly person?
If I told you everybody I know, we'd be here for a very long time, and we'd neither of us get any work done.
And the wicked ex?
Him too, Mr. Sunshine said. Though to be fair, there were faults on both sides. There usually are, when couples split up.
Ted, he locked her up in an asteroid for 4,000...
And now she's proposing to crash her asteroid into our planet, Mr. Sunshine pointed out. Mostly at a guess, because she knows hubby's got a soft spot for it. Otherwise, there's plenty of uninhabited rocks out there in space she could prang her asteroid against. But instead she chooses us. Like I said, that's Dolly all over.
If you know her, Gina said, maybe you could have a word with her.
Mr. Sunshine made a rude noise. The chances of Dolly listening to me are pretty remote, he said. No, if I stuck my oar in, it'd only make things worse. Trust me.
Sounds like you two have history.
There's a lot of history about, Mr. Sunshine pointed out. Besides, Dolly's not my client. I haven't been asked to help with this case. Wasn't even allowed to come into the meeting. Professional etiquette therefore requires me to keep my nose out of it, and that's something I'll be delighted to do. Never let it be said that Ted Sunshine ever approached a colleague's client. You simply don't do that sort of thing. You know that.
But nobody's told Tom you know these people. If he knew that...
Don't you go telling him,
Mr. Sunshine said sternly. And anyway, Gina added, this Lilith person isn't Tom's client. She's Brian's. You like Brian. You wouldn't mind helping him out now, would you? If Mr. Sunshine's resolve wavered, it was only for a moment.
Brian didn't seem too put out that I wasn't asked to the meeting, he said. At least I don't seem to remember him kicking up a fuss about it. Well then.
Well, what? Mr. Sunshine gave her a how dare you be in the right all the time look.
If you must know, my loyalties are just a tad divided where Dolly and her ex are concerned. Therefore, I choose to keep well clear. If you don't stick your nose in, it won't get bitten off, and that, he added cheerfully, is your actual wisdom.
Fine, Gina said, reining back her impatience with an effort. But couldn't you at least give me a bit of advice based on your deep inside knowledge of the parties involved? That wouldn't count as actually doing anything. And you know how much you love giving advice.
Only when people don't want to hear it.
Make an exception. Just this once. Mr. Sunshine sighed.
If you want my opinion,
he said,
the only one who can sort this mess out is the ex. Presumably he got the key to the asteroid, or he knows where it is. If she gets the key, she won't need to use Earth as a sort of stationary hammer.
And he'll listen to reason?
I really doubt that,
said Mr. Sunshine.
But you could try bribery and threats, unless he's changed a lot since I last saw him. Either of those might do the trick.
Gina waited. Mr. Sunshine smiled at her. All right, Gina said. What's his name?
You're not going to like this.
What's his name? Mr. Sunshine thought for a moment, opened his desk drawer, glowed blue with reflected light, shut the drawer, scratched his chin.
How would it be,
he said,
if I had a word with him myself?
Gina breathed out slowly. You'd be all right with that?
To be honest, no. But I'd be even less all right with giving out his name like a free sample. So, lesser of two evils, really.
In that case, Gina said, go for it. Can I tell Tom? Deep frown, and outside a few flakes of snow fell.
I suppose you ought to,
he said.
You can tell him that I aim to resolve this problem and give the firm's client full satisfaction, as is our policy. As regards a quarter of the earth, it'd probably be better if his chickens went uncounted for the time being. He won't like that.
Mr. Sunshine added happily.
What a shame.
Gina left, having thanked him sincerely. He slid open a certain desk drawer.
Well,
he said, here we go again.
Not necessarily.
Optimist? I'll get his number for you.
Sorry,
said Mr. Sunshine.
Whose number?
You know, him. Mr. Sunshine's face hardened.
Certainly not.
But you told the Noctis female you were going to...
I lied.
Crikey. Mr. Sunshine scowled.
Oh, come on,
he said.
I can lie if I like, can't I?
You're very good at it.
Thank you.
But is it appropriate, all things considered? Mr. Sunshine's face went a funny colour.
Get lost,
he said.
Who made you my conscience, anyhow?
You did.
Yes, all right, but I didn't mean it.
Mr. Sunshine took a deep breath.
Having weighed the moral imperative carefully and given all due consideration to the many conflicting factors, I choose not to fulfil the promise Gina wheedled out of me through blatant emotional manipulation. How's that?
Much better. Lilith McGregor sat outside a cafe listening to her silence download. It was probably her favourite, although the ex-boyfriend who'd given it to her definitely wasn't. 180 minutes of absolute dead silence, performed by the Boston Symphony Orchestra, conducted by James Levine. Around her, the world roared like a hungry tiger, but in the space between her earbuds, nothing but tranquility. She was supposed to be editing the pictures from her latest wedding shoot, but there didn't seem to be much point. Bride with unknown woman, bride and groom with unknown woman, bride, groom, bride's mother and father, and unknown woman. Bride wearing crash helmet, dancing topless on table with unknown woman. She might as well give up and get a job in a call centre. Her newsfeed winked at the top corner of her screen. She didn't usually bother. But right now, something like a good war or tidal wave might take her mind off her troubles. She took a look. Archaeologists, she read, digging at an undisclosed site in Jordan, had just discovered the biggest ancient statue ever found, dating to around 2000 BC. At 92.1 metres tall, it was ever so slightly shorter than the Statue of Liberty, but whereas the latter was a hollow shell, the newly unearthed artefact was a solid basalt. It represented a standing female figure with 3 heads, and an inscription on the base identified it as an ancient Mesopotamian goddess, Tiamat the Destroyer. There were the pictures of the heads. 2 of them she didn't recognise. The third, oh, come on, she said aloud, although of course she couldn't hear herself because of the earbuds. Not, she decided, 3 heads, more like 2 heads with unknown woman. Except she wasn't an unknown bloody woman, was she? Oh no, she was her mother. The mood was completely ruined, so she pulled the earbuds out and pocketed them. Weirdness, she thought. Why me? At school she'd been the only kid who didn't like Harry Potter because it was silly. All those witches and wizards and magic, and everybody knew it wasn't real, so pretending was just plain stupid. Now it seemed weirdness had marked her for its own. The ridiculous technical anomaly ruining her work and keeping her from earning a living wasn't a faulty circuit or an aberrant algorithm. It was a goddess of death from the Bronze Age, who was also, in some unspeakably freaky way, her mum. No way. True, she couldn't remember her real mother, who'd died when she was a baby, but that hadn't really mattered all that much since Dad had remarried very soon after, and her stepmother had always been fine, of adequate quality and fit for purpose. These days, she was a vague, comfortable voice on a phone who sent WhatsApp pictures of her latest patchwork projects and agreed with everything she said. Exactly what Lilith wanted from a parent, which wasn't really very much, but Tiamat the Destroyer? The irritating thing was, she believed it, every word. Belief is when you just know, in the angry red face of all the evidence and all the logical arguments. Now, when she looked on her screen at the face of the unknown woman, she was all too painfully aware of the resemblance. Same nose, same mouth and chin, and all that weird shit about 120 reincarnations. She wanted to reach inside her ear with a giant toothpick and hook the idea out of her brain, but she knew it was true. Just knew. That's all. And now, apparently, they dug up a 90-metre statue of Mummy in the desert somewhere. Coincidence? She was rather inclined to doubt it, but Mummy was on her way, driving a 300-mile circumference asteroid straight at the Earth, or so the man from Dawson's had told her. She thought about that. She knew she ought to be really, really scared, but for some reason, she wasn't. Instead, she was annoyed, embarrassed, angry, sure and certain symptoms. She couldn't help thinking that Tiamat really was her mother after all. What the man from Dawson's had failed to tell her what anybody was proposing to do about all of this. She'd asked him, of course, but all she got out of him was a load of flannel about consulting with his colleagues and formulating a joined-up action plan. Latin for, I haven't got a clue. The hell with him, she thought. He's useless. She really never ought to have gone to him in the first place, and as soon as she had a free 5 minutes, she was going to write a real stinker of a review on Facebook. Meanwhile, excuse me, someone was standing beside her. Lilith looked at her and saw a smart, impressive woman in her early 30s, dressed in a navy blue business suit and holding the very latest model tablet. We all see our angels in a different way. The traditionally minded see flowing white draperies and wings. Lilith saw the cool, confident face and the Loganberry XP7000 and knew she was in the presence of a superior being. "Excuse me," repeated the superior being, "but are you Lilith McGregor?" "Yes, that's me. Who the hell are you?" The woman handed her a business card. "Consuela Teasdale," she said. Mind if I sit down? Teasdale, Lilith repeated. Consuela smiled grimly. My ex-husband. I think you know him. Yes, he's a jerk. Lilith frowned. The card read, Consuela Teasdale, Assistant Mage, JWW, Commercial and Industrial Sorcery and Magic, Theological and Paranormal Engineers, 70 St. Mary Axe, London. This, said Consuela, is highly unethical, and I could probably get struck off just for talking to you like this, but I felt I couldn't just stand by and do nothing while my idiot ex screws up your case. That man, she added with feeling, is a menace. I could hit him. I really could. He's no good. Useless, Consuela said. You deserve so much better. Well, of course. Nevertheless, Lilith pursed her lips. So, naturally you want me to bring my business to you instead? Consuela laughed. I know how it sounds, but it's not like that at all. This Tiamat thing is really important. It'd be a crime against humanity to leave it in the hands of an idiot like Brian Teasdale. You realise I haven't got any money? Doesn't matter, Consuela said briskly. My firm, JWW, has been retained by the United Nations to solve all the world's problems. Really? Oh, yes. After all, we're the best in the business, so naturally they came to us. Here, take a look for yourself. On the screen of the Lorganberry was a scan of a letter on UN-headed notepaper signed by the current Secretary-General. Lilith read it. Perfectly genuine as far as she could tell. Shit, she said reverently. That's pretty impressive. Well, yes, Consuela said. It's also a damn good reason why you should entrust your business to us, rather than a cowboy outfit like Dawson's. Anyhow, it also means you won't have to pay a penny. You'd be our client, naturally, but the UN will pick up the tab. You're sure about that? You have my word, Consuela said. And I'll put it in writing, of course. It just so happens I've got a client agreement already drawn up for you to sign. She swiped the screen. You'll want to read it carefully first, naturally. Lilith read it. It all seemed perfectly straightforward, and there it was in black and white. Not a penny to pay. Fine, she said. What do I... All I need is a thumbprint. There and there. Great. That's all there is to it. You're now officially a client of JWW. I'll write to Brian straight away and tell him to send me his file. Her face softened into a very human grin. You'll be livid. You won't get into trouble. Trouble, Consuela said, is my business. Her fingers strayed to a gold monkey pendant dangling from her ivory neck. Right, she said. Enough precious time's been wasted as it is, thanks to your no good previous advisors. We need to get cracking now. I take it you're free for the rest of the morning? Lilith considered her laptop, crammed with spoiled images. I guess so, she said. Do you need me for something? Consuela stood up. Ever been in a helicopter before? No, Lilith hadn't. Nor was she aware that it was possible, let alone legal, for one to land in the middle of a busy street in the middle of the day in central London. But apparently it was, so that was all right. Where are we going? She said, as the chopper soared high over the skyscrapers. I've scheduled a meeting with a specialist consultant. Wow, Lilith thought. Great. Polly Basessu, Consuela said, raising her voice over the roar of the engine. She's the Kawaguchia Integrated Circuits Professor of the Sum of Human Knowledge at the University of Reading. Smartest person in the world. In the world? No shit, Consuela said. You'll like her. She's a doll. Look her up if you like. Lilith did just that, and found that the professor had 5,764,917 positive reviews on TripAdvisor, so it was true. She knows everything, Consuela went on. All that was, is, and shall be, so I thought that she'd be a good place to start. Eminently sensible, Lilith thought. She could feel a great load shifting off her shoulders, thanks to the superior beings sitting next to her in the helicopter's cramped aft compartment. Here she felt in her bones was someone who knew what to do, and in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, the asteroid would be diverted and all her pictures would be mum-free, and it would be as if none of this nonsense had ever happened. The helicopter dropped like a stone, hovered for a moment, and deposited itself into a perfectly sized space marked helicopters only in a car park. The roar subsided and her door popped open. "This way," Consuela said. A few minutes later, they were in the lobby of a building that looked rather like a rather dreary hospital, but which Consuela assured her was the Sum of Human Knowledge faculty building. They were issued with visitors' passes. For some reason, the photo on Consuela's pass didn't come out very well, and rode in a lift to the 17th floor. They walked along a corridor that smelt faintly of orange peel and stopped outside a door. Consuela knocked. A voice said, "Come in." "Hi, Polly," Consuela said. "This is Lilith. I told you about her on the phone." Professor Basessu was eating a sandwich. She looked so like Consuela they might have been sisters. "Hi," she said through a mouthful of sandwich. "Take a seat. With you in a second." The room, Lilith noted, was somewhat sparse. A desk with nothing on it, 3 chairs, bare walls, 1 big window behind them, with a view of the car park. On the hand not holding the sandwich, the professor clutched another Loganberry XP7000, but the case of hers was lilac, not sky blue, inside which presumably nestled the Sum of Human Knowledge. Lilith felt reassured and leaned back in the chair, which was tolerably comfortable. "Sorry to have kept you," the professor said. "Right. How can I help you guys?" "Just to recap," Consuela said, "we've just found out that Lilith's mother is Tiamat the Great Goddess." "Oh, her," the professor nodded approvingly. "With you so far?" "It turns out," Consuela went on, "that 4,000 years ago, Tiamat's ex-husband locked her up in an asteroid, which is now on a collision course with the Earth." The professor nodded. "I know," she said. "We've been watching it." "Really?" Lilith felt a twinge of apprehension. "It's close enough to see with a telescope?" The professor smiled. "No way," she said. "We established its existence by observing diametric phase flux patterns in the antipositron flow at the ridiculously big Hadron Collider at Rittersbach, sort of like that trick you do at school with iron filings and a magnet. It's there all right. Sodding great big thing, coming straight at us. Sorry, you were saying?" "Tiamat," Consuela went on, "not unreasonably, wants to be released from the asteroid, but she can't get out without the key. Her ex has stashed it away somewhere. If the asteroid hits the Earth, it will be disintegrated into space dust. So will we, of course, and she'll be free. But she says she'd rather not take out the planet unless it's absolutely necessary. If we can get the key and send it to her, she'll divert the asteroid and everything will be fine." "I call that very reasonable," the professor said. "Generous, even." "So, what we want to know," Consuela went on, "is what to do next. Any suggestions?" The professor thought about it for a moment, consulted her Loganberry, then leaned forward on her desk and smiled. "What do you think?" "Well," Consuela said, "I think we have 2 options open to us, which we ought to explore simultaneously. 1, find Tiamat's ex and make him give us the key." "Love it," said the professor. "Go on." "The other," Consuela continued, "is for Lilith here to have a word with her mum, tell her we're on the job, and ask her to go easy on the crashing into the planet side of things while we're tracing her ex and making him see reason." "Perfect," the professor said. "Go for it." "You think so? Pure gold," the professor said. "Can't miss. Exactly what I was going to suggest." "And you'd sign a report to that effect?" "Like a rat up a drain," the professor said. "Sketch something out for me and I'll get it back to you straight away." "Thanks," Consuela said. "Sorry to be a pain, but we need something on the file to cover ourselves with the professional indemnity insurance." "Absolutely," the professor said. "Anything to help out the United Nations. Talking of which, have you heard from Tony lately?" "I spoke to him last week. As a matter of fact, he and Cherise send their regards." "Bless," the professor said fondly. "Sweet guy." Consuela stood up. "Well," she said, "I think that just about covers everything. I'd love to stay and chat, but I expect Lilith's got things she needs to do. Thanks again. All my best to Hugo and the kittens. And then they were back in the helicopter, high above the rooftops. It's always worth getting an outside opinion from a properly qualified expert, Consuela said. I don't suppose Brian suggested anything of the sort. No, Lilith said. He didn't. Consuela clicked her tongue. That's the old-fashioned way, she said. Do it yourself. Keep it in-house. Ramp up the billable hours. We don't need no stinking experts. We like to think we've outgrown all of that at JWW. Lilith had been thinking. It hadn't been easy because sweet-scented fumes of reassurance kept drifting up her mind and clouding it over, like condensation on the inside of your windscreen. Do we actually know where to find my mum's eggs? Leave that to me, Consuela said briskly. We have the resources at JWW. That's what comes of having the foresight to invest in people on the scale we do. My mum's ex, she paused. Would that make him my dad? Consuela looked out of the window. From that height, you could be forgiven for thinking that you could see all the kingdoms of the earth. That's kind of a grey area, she said. What with all the reincarnation stuff? We can't say for sure whether the genetic matrix passes by partially or only via the double X chromosome. Tiamat is definitely your mother, but that's as far as we can go at this stage, until we get the results of the tests. But you want me to talk to her? It's essential, Consuela said. Basically, it's the cornerstone of our strategy. You don't object, do you? I guess not. I'll be there with you, naturally. Lilith felt a surge of relief, such as Pooh and Piglet would have felt on seeing Christopher Robin striding towards them. In that case, she said, that'll be fine. Will there have to be those things? Excuse me? Last time, when Brian Teasdale did it, there were things. Demons. Consuela laughed. Oh, God. That's so like Brian. I'm amazed he doesn't write all his letters with a quill pen. We don't do demons at JWW. That's good. I didn't like them much. Who does? Don't worry. There won't be any of that crap on my watch. Demons, for crying out loud. She laughed again. That's like making a phone call with 2 cocoa tins and a piece of string. Typical Dawsons. They can't bring themselves to spend the money to buy decent tech. The helicopter swooped. For a moment, Lilith felt uncomfortably alienated from her intestines, but she glanced at Consuela, who didn't seem to be in the least bothered, and drew comfort from her presence. She felt safe. Even if the cockpit was suddenly to fly open and she went tumbling headlong to the ground, she was pretty sure Consuela would bear her up so her foot didn't even get bruised. I'm so glad you're doing all this for me, she said. I feel so much better about it now. All part of the JWW service. When she got home, Lilith scanned the news channels for any reports about giant asteroids. There weren't any. Well, there were quite a few, but only in places where there are always giant killer asteroids, just as there are always potted palms in dentist waiting rooms. She allowed herself a moment's smugness at the expense of all those poor second-raters out there who weren't clients of JWW and didn't have access to the real skinny. Probably best if they never learned the truth. It would only bother them, and all to no purpose, since there was nothing they could do. Meanwhile, Consuela was on the case, and it'd all be sorted out with a minimum of melodrama and fuss. She paused to consider the implications. For all she knew, stuff like this was going on all the time. Existential threats to the species and the planet, and Consuela and others like her were beavering away, keeping everybody safe, with precious little reward and no recognition whatsoever. Still, if you were someone like that, recognition or even abject adoration from ordinary little people wouldn't matter all that much, because what stock would you as a superior being put in the opinions of creatures so far below you as to be, for all intents and purposes, plankton? You'd know what you'd done, and that would be enough. What if the horrible, abusive ex did turn out to be her father? She didn't like the thought of that at all. You can't choose your parents. Other people do that for you, and as often as not they make a hash of it. Nobody can say it's your fault. Even so, what kind of man would lock someone up in an asteroid for 4,000 years out of, she assumed, sheer spite? A jerk, obviously. A creep. Query, would someone like that be prepared to listen to reason, even when the fate of an entire planet full of sentient beings hung in the balance? Probably not. But presumably, Consuela had a handle on that. She'd fix him. She'd make him squirm, and then she'd get the key off him, and everything would be fine. She was, after all, a professional, all in a day's work for someone like her. She opened her laptop and spent a few minutes studying the obtrusive face in all her photographs. That poor woman, she thought. It can't have been fun for her. True, she was apparently some sort of goddess of death. Or was she? That's what Brian Teasdale had told her. But she knew all about Brian Teasdale now, so it was entirely possible that Mum was nothing of the sort. Consuela, she remembered, had called her the Great Goddess. Well, of course. Her mother, after all. Thank you for listening to the end of Chapter 3, which was Prancer. I'm looking forward to bringing you Vixen, which is Chapter 4, in a couple of days. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think, how you're getting on with listening to it. If you've got any feedback at all or any requests, please click the notification bell. It does help the channel as well as subscribing. Any feedback you've got is always helpful, and I hope you're enjoying the holidays, and I look forward to reading more for you soon. So please click that notifications bell, subscribe if you're not already, share if you want to, but thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you.